Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of EST, a podcast for established church leaders by established church leaders. My name is Josh.
My name is Sam, and we on YouTube. Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up? Hey, YouTubers. Are we like?
So this is.
Are we YouTube
we just gotta say
influencers
this.
now?
Oh yeah, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
That's what I want to put on. What is it called? A CV. I'm going to put that on my CV.
Yeah. If you're British,
YouTube
it's a CV. Mm-hmm.
Influencer, or I think a CV is just a fancy resume, right?
That's what I think. I agree.
And it's Latin. It's like curriculum vitae, or I don't know. I sound like a doofus there.
Just a little bit. All right.
But anyway,
so
first episode. So it's a long time coming. First episode on YouTube. So there may be some of you tuning in, watching us instead of listening. But of course, we appreciate our longtime listeners. But now we have some viewers, which is kind of cool. Got a good episode for you today. I'm going to be talking about how normal-sized churches do pastoral transitions correctly. So this is for those everyday churches that may or may not have all of the resources that some of the larger churches have. And how does this work? So might have some search teams cluing into this episode, which would be great if you're
we'd
on a
love to
search
help you
team.
out with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we would. But first, we certainly want to thank our sponsor, Church Teams. They do a lot of things. One of the things they do really well is text to church, the two-way texting. It gives you the ability to get your message heard and to hear back from your people. I know that in my church, the number one way to get people to read a message is by texting, and few do it better than Church Teams. They do a lot of other things as well. They actually have a full slate of church management software offerings. We've talked about them before on previous episodes, obviously, because they sponsor the show, but I at least want to point out that they do texting well. So what you can do is you can go check them out at est.church. So go to est.church. It's a website. It's a landing page. Have some information there about Church Teams. You can sign up to get a little mini consult. They are also offering our listeners 2 months free. So you can't beat that. Zero risk. If you're thinking about church management software, want an upgrade, looking to jump into that world, or if you're just unhappy with what you have, you should absolutely go check out Church Teams. Their prices are very low. They start at $37 a month for churches under 200 people. You can add text to church for $10, online giving for $20. Can't go wrong. So go check out Church Teams at est.church.
Yeah,
All right, Josh King.
Good sponsors. We enjoy them. We are thankful for them. What's up, Sam?
Have you ever done a transition in a church? I have. I've done a few. I know you've done a few. I've done more than you, though.
You probably have, yeah, especially for lead pastorate. I think you've definitely done way more of those than I have.
But I'm in a good place now, so I don't have to make a transition.
That's good.
Which I'm glad about. So I know some church members listen in to this. All right, West Bradenton people, this one's not about me. I just want you to know this one is not about me. So let's. One thing that I've noticed, and I think this is a problem that can be easily resolved, and it's not necessarily a structural problem or a polity problem in the church, but it's just it's a practical problem. Here's the issue. You and I serve in congregational churches, and a lot of churches out there are congregational, but even if you're not congregational, you'll often have an elder board or a personnel committee or somebody that kind of oversees the staff from an accountability standpoint. Very common in a nonprofit. In fact, there are laws around that. You kind of have to have, some measure of accountability. You have to have a board or some board-like mechanism to oversee those who are running the church. So it is good for accountability to have a personnel team, but often the search team is different than the personnel team or committee. Sometimes you're operating with committees. What do you do with that? Because I can understand why, particularly for a lead pastor, a church would get a separate search team, but then the personnel committee gets left out, and it gets a little wonky because often the people serving on the search don't have the background of all the personnel, human resource issues.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of wonky things when it comes to churches that are led by committees, because they are it's a wonky system. And that's not a fault or a plus of it. It's
Wonky
got
is
its
such a
faults.
good word.
It is a great word. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's wonky. So I think you would definitely want to include those. So a strategy that I've seen out there, if you are really a committee sort of governed system, is to include what I would call the officers of those committees. I think that a lot of times what I've seen in what happened in these processes, or processi, or whatever you call it, they bog down at a certain layer. So what you're talking about there is, as the discussion goes on, they'll bog down in the part where you're talking about benefits and that sort of stuff. Well, then a little later, the conversation about compensation gets bogged down because the finance team needs to be involved in these sort of things. So theoretically, let's say that there was a church that had a personnel team, a finance team, let's say a very active deacon body or something like that. What I would maybe suggest looking at or exploring is that lead pastor search team maybe not be just a random other, but maybe the officers of those three teams and the quote-unquote highest rankers on the current staff. So what that might look like is the co-chairs, that's 2 from the personnel, 2 from finance, 2 or 3 from deacons, and then maybe an executive pastor and the associate pastor. That together would make a very informed, there's some inside knowledge, some outside knowledge, some personnel, some finance, all sorts of layers there that really kind of inform the process and could be very helpful to what's going forward.
Yeah, and that's good advice. And also, I realize that some of you may be listening and you have an elder board and the elders are going to select.
They do, and that's fine.
But even so, it might be good to get some outside input from the elder board, that involves, pulling in a couple of other church members that may have some knowledge about church items. Okay, so it's not wrong to have a search team that's separate from the personnel committee, but you do need to do some things to make sure that you don't.
Yeah, think through some things
the cracks
before they begin. And I know we've got a list here that we want to go through real quick, but before we do, I just want to kind of share. There's some pre-work you can do. For instance, like building a separate web page that has all the information, the basic information, like a church bio, that sort of stuff, and an interest form. Whenever we're doing hiring here, we have all candidates fill out the same interest form, whether they're internal or external, because it asks the same questions. And I want to get the same information from all the candidates. Resumes can be wildly different. So just a couple of things like that, and it keeps everything in the same, spreadsheet. So everything's in the same place, all that. So maybe some pre-work, and then as you've got your pre-work done, you've got your team ready, which we just talked about. Sam, what are some of the top things that a church could do? Let's go through that list on how they could better this major decision for the life of a church.
Yeah, I also want to thank John Harms. He's the one who gave us this idea. So he's a regular listener. John, thank you.
Shout out.
He chimed in and sent, a Twitter message or a Facebook message or something and said, hey, you've got to do this subject matter. And we love hearing from our listeners. So if you have an idea of at this point, I guess, you guys have been tuning in for a while. And if you're like, well, you've never talked about this, well, let us know. We got lots of opinions about lots of things, and we're glad to share them. That's why we do podcasts.
Absolutely.
Some best practices here for normal-sized churches. Now, again, we understand that, the search process for a church of 5,000 is going to be different than a search process of a church of 50. So this episode is more about, hey, you're a normal-sized church. The median church size in the United States is 65 people. How does that church go through the search process? Mm-hmm. And I'll just say this. Smaller churches tend to move more slowly, and you can't. You've got to move more quickly. You hear about these churches that go 2 and 3 years searching for a pastor. And, a lot of times these churches that are in this median range, 50 to 100 people, they're able to do that because they're used to doing a lot of the work. The pastor can't do everything, so the church is still functioning. Somebody in the church is preaching, or they've got somebody from the community that's doing it, and you're able to get by. But I would encourage you, moving slowly is not necessarily noble. Now, you don't want to rush through the process, of course, but it's not. The Spirit can move quickly just as the Spirit can move slowly. So let's not think that slow is better when it comes to a search process for a pastor. Man, I have seen churches. Well, I pastored a church, my first church, Union Band Baptist Church in Howardstown, Kentucky, still doing their thing. I think they had gone 2 or 3 years more without a pastor before I got there. And they had kind of given up because no one was, I was one of the first to give them a call and say, "You guys want a preacher?" And they haven't even held normal services in 2 years. So I would say when you move slowly, you really set yourself back. You want to have a posture or a default of moving more quickly as opposed to slowly. So go into it saying, "Hey, we're going to move quickly." Don't go into it saying, "Hey, we're going to move slowly."
Like the number one thing then would be to move a little quicker. We joke often that like a month is 4 days in church world because it's just 4 Sundays or 4 or 5 Sundays. There's really no reason you cannot have a pastor search team meeting Sunday night and Wednesday night, both. You don't have to only meet on Wednesday night. You can cover some things. You can also cover some things via email, but moving through the process a little quicker is better. I would say shoot for 6 months. In normal circumstances, shoot for about 6 months to fill that spot. I don't think that you need to go 2-3 years. And I completely agree with you. Holy Spirit created all of existence in 6 days and then rested on one. And yet it takes him 2.5 years to fill the pastorate of one church. And so I think we can move a little bit faster, and it probably would help.
You're showing some theological cards to your belief of creationism there, Josh.
Sorry, I do believe in a
some
King
might
God.
say that creation took millions and millions of years, so therefore that's how long we need to take to find a pastor.
If that's your theology, make sure that you let people know, because that may be something that they want to know.
That it very well might be. The second best practice here is how you communicate with your church and with the candidate. You need to regularly communicate with the church, particularly as you enter into new phases of the search. Hey, we're receiving resumes. Let the church know. Hey, we're down to 10 people that we're really analyzing. Let the church know. We've got a candidate. Please let the church know. So at each major phase, I think you need to be communicating with the church. Now, you don't want to reveal things that could hurt a potential candidate and the family of the candidate. You want to be careful about revealing too many details. You don't want things out prematurely, and you don't want to break confidence. So if you're part of the search, please don't break confidence. But on the candidate side, and this is where you and I have experienced this, man, I had one church. This was many, many years ago, and it was a median church size, probably 100 people or so.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a full-time pastor, and this is so funny. I applied. I was at that point in my career, I was looking for a job. So I applied, and I got a job. I'd never heard. Got a job at another church. That church didn't work out. Yeah, did not work out. Got a job at another church. The church that I originally applied to finally called me and said, "Hey, are you still interested?" I'm like, "I've already transitioned twice." Like, where were you guys 2-3 years ago? Like, literally, I sent you my resume over 2 years ago. I'd totally forgotten about you guys. Anything like that ever happened to you?
It has. I've gone through the process, and then 6-7 months later, I'm starting a new role, and then a couple months later, they're like, "Hey, we really like your resume. Would you fill out this questionnaire?" And I'm like, no, it took you, I had no idea, you did not respond. So I really do think that this, in our day and age, it is the responsible, courteous thing to do to respond to candidates. I think that's on you. And you could say, oh, we're just a small church. I don't care. I'm an individual and I respond to emails. So the 3, the 5, the 7 of you on this team can respond to emails. So collect them at one point. That's why I suggest having a spreadsheet. You can literally go through and copy all of those, blind carbon copy them, and let them know we are no longer accepting resumes. We do have your resume. Thank you. We're going to go through this step. I think there are some certain things to communicate to candidates. One, we got your resume. I think that's a thing to let people know. We got your name. We've got your number. We're going to look at this. I think it's helpful once you screen through them, say, you guys, we're no longer considering you. Thank you so much. God bless you. The next ones, we are considering you. I think a couple things to let them know through the stages is, how many are you considering? When you let a candidate know, hey, you're one of our top guys, that's great. But if it's like 1 of 100, that is an entirely different thing than 1 of 3. So let them know, you and 9 others have made it to the next stage. Would you please fill out this questionnaire? I think so, where they are in the process and what your next steps are. We would like to receive all these questionnaires within 10 days. We're going to then allow a week for our team to read them. We will be getting back to you within 3 weeks. Continue to pray. We'll continue to pray for you. It really does help the candidate on the other side. You're also communicating one of those resumes is your next pastor, presumably. You're also communicating the way your church functions. Is it efficient? Does it communicate? Is it kind? Is it generous? Does it think of others? If it's not, you're kind of communicating to the candidates, hey, we're sort of unorganized. We don't really respect other people, those sort of things. So you want to communicate that, because I'm sure that's not how you are, but you might be inadvertently communicating that to the candidates.
So have you ever received like odd communication from a search team before? I'm just curious.
Yes. A lot of it has been odd. I do have a buddy that received the wrong email. He received, and it was really far. I mean, it was like 1 of 3 people, and there was some, and he received it. He instantly knew the name of another candidate, knew that guy, knew some different information. It got very sort of wonky. Again, very wonky in that stage of the process. How about you? Did you receive things?
Do you remember, and this was a while back for our listeners, I want to be careful saying this. Do you remember when we were both a candidate for the same church and they didn't know that we knew each other?
Yes, I do remember that. And we were comparing notes pre and post show. Pre and post show, we were like, oh, hey, did you hear
that was a really
No?
strange season. And here you and I are like, do you want it? Do you want it? What do we do about this? Do we tell them? Because their search team just showed up in my church.
Yeah, I mean, because they were a lot closer to you. Let me
Please give a candidate a head in communication. Give a heads up if you're going to go be at the church, please.
Let me just a side note here, and I know we've got other things to cover, but I think that we should all be, grown-ups about this. And in our congregational system and stuff, it's going to be a common thing that a couple of friends are going to be candidates in churches. Oh, yeah. I think with the way, and so maybe you don't know how to handle that. Maybe you and your buddy don't know how to handle that. The way that I would say it, the way that Sam and I have handled it before, is just say it, because it's not, you're not dating the same girl. It's a job. It's a church. All kinds of factors you can't control. They may like something about you and not the other person. So I just say be open and honest about it. Compare notes, help one another, pray for one another, celebrate if the other one goes further than you do. But that would just be a side note for those of us, our listeners, that are like, oh, that's happening and I don't know if to tell them or not. Yeah, go ahead and tell them.
More common than people realize, actually.
It's pretty common, yeah.
And just know that if you're the church, your candidates are likely talking to each other
We all know each other.
Particularly if
Yeah.
you're pulling from the same area. A lot of small churches will pull from the same area. They're probably talking, unless they don't like each other, and then they feel like they're competing with each other, which is not a good thing, but that does happen too. All right. Another best practice here: don't do the beauty contest thing. Please don't. Just
We're on video now. Are you like
yeah. Look
we
at
wouldn't win
this
any beauty
face.
contest. Yeah, that's the best we got.
Don't bring in a preacher one week and then another one the next week and another one the next week, and then ask the church, well, which one did you like best?
Which
don't.
one did you like?
Just don't do that. And it still happens. We're saying this because I still hear stories at Church Answers of this happening. Don't.
Yeah, I'm actually aware of one of these happening right now. And I've even seen it done where they had them preach the same day. One right after the other. And then you vote and you let that one candidate know, hey, you got it. You're in.
So
that's just
would
a
you
really
want to
bad
go
move.
first or second? What do you?
I'd want to go out the door. I'm going out the door, and I'm not coming back.
No, and I want to know how this works. If you're going to do the same day,
Okay,
is there like a coin flip? Like in a football game where you get to choose who does the kickoff, and
you just got to hope it's not highest seed. Like the best one so far is going first, and then you got second, then you got third, and you're like, well, we needed 3 guys. So you're preaching
tournament.
Yeah.
So okay, as ridiculous as this sounds. There are still churches that do things sort of like this. Don't do it. And if you're the candidate and this is how the church is doing the search, just get out.
It's a red flag.
You don't. It's one of the biggest red flags of all. Just get out. There's plenty of other churches. You don't. God's not calling you there. I'll just be the Holy Spirit. It's just like, don't go.
It really does boil what we do as pastors down to performance. And if that's it, man, you might preach a sugar stick that day, a great one that day, but none of us have that great one in us week after week after week. And so you're just setting it up to say, like, my preaching ability is the only thing I'm here for. I can't actually lead, all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't do it. No, I mean, God can lead you there, of course, and maybe you help them see out of that, but it's just a bad deal. So if you're search committee, don't do it.
Can you imagine an accounting firm that's looking to hire somebody, and they bring in all these candidates and they put them in a room and they give them all tax returns and watch them, like, who can do this the fastest? I mean, you don't need to bring in a slate of preachers and then pick one. Like, it's honestly, Sam, the word is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Well, let me ask you this. I think a lot of churches that are doing that just really don't realize. And so what would you say to a church that's saying, oh, we were planning on doing that, but what's your bet? We've got these 2 people, let's say, and we really like them both. How do you, when you get down to that?
Pick one.
Just pick one and go.
Pick one. You have to. You can't have 2 pastors. And
sure.
It is so disruptive to the family, and word gets out with you can't move faster than a text. With the way communication works today with social media and texting, it's not like you can bring somebody in and keep that under wraps. It gets out immediately. Like the second the name is released, people start texting it around. They send links and screenshots, and just don't do it. If you're down to 2 and you really like both of them, you pick one, and and if it doesn't work out, hopefully the other one is still there. After the if the process continues, but you've got to pick one. You can't have 2 pastors, and you've got to pick one before you bring them in to preach.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's wrong for you to say, look, we're going to go with candidate A, candidate B. Thank you so much. We have decided to move forward with candidate A. You are actually our 1B choice. We just decided to go this way. We'll let you know how it goes, and that may not work out. And so I think, again, being open and honest and direct will help you in that process.
All right, last thing, making a decision. Should whoever's responsible for the church, for the search, whoever's responsible for the search, whether an elder board, search team, whatever, should they be unanimous or not? I'm going to let you have that one.
I say no. I really do. I think that there's going to be difference of opinions. There's going to be different, and you decide at the very beginning, before you even need to make choices. I think one of the first things you could do as a pastor search team is to say, okay, we are going to go with a 2/3 majority vote. We're going to go with an 80% vote. We're going to go with a majority vote. That sort of stuff. I really encourage you not to go unanimous. Unanimous, it's not the same as unity. It's not the same as what you're actually trying to achieve. So you can all say 2 factors we're going to hold. We're going to make decisions based on a majority vote, and we're going to be unified in that. So that you can, as a Christian, go, I believe that we're all gifted by God. We all are Holy Spirit indwelled. And so a majority vote for me is as good as, and even if I'm on the dissenting side, that's what we've decided. Let's go forward and be united on it. I think those 2 things will help you speed up quite a bit. I've seen quite a few pastor search teams just get bogged down because they cannot be a unanimous vote. And there's often times, we know this through committee structure and our experience with committee structures, there's often just members of committees that have agendas, or they have personalities, or they're just there to vote no because they believe that there should always be a no vote. Well, you cannot get to a unanimous vote if somebody has that concept. So I really, really suggest you go forward with what I would suggest a majority vote and unity going forward. That we speak as a team. That's how it goes.
All right, there you go. How normal-sized churches do pastoral transitions correctly. So, thank you again to church teams. Go get that free offer at est.church. And also thank you, Church Answers, for sponsoring this show. We've got a bookstore at Church Answers, so go to churchanswers.com, click on the bookstore link, and guess what? We can deliver physical products to your door. Great curated content there, good deals on Bibles. It's powered by Christian Book, so we're grateful for Christian Book, and so it's got all of the search features that Christian Book has. But when you order from Church Answers, a portion of the benefits go to support African pastors. So it's a heartbeat of ours to help get African pastors certified, and we're doing that through our bookstore. So you can go to churchanswers.com, click on bookstore, and work through that process. You know how to order online. You guys know how to do that. So go check us out there. And thank you all for listening and watching. Josh, people can see us on YouTube. We're YouTube influencers.
I'm gonna have to start doing my hair. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next week.